Video games have some of the richest storytelling in any form of media. Most of the magic comes from the worlds that are built and the characters that populate them. Some games go for a more realistic look, some more stylized, and some, like the case for Banjo Kazooie, smack some googly eyes on it and call it a day. So what's the story with these characters? What purpose do they serve? Are they a part of a family of characters? These are some of the questions I'll be answering today, among many more, taking a deep look at every species in Banjo Kazooie. We may have a few little tidbits from other games, but there will be a separate video for other games in the series and other series in the future. Why don't we break this out level by level? Into Spiral Mountain we go. Banjo. He's a bear with a blue backpack. He sports some yellow shorts and an epic shark tooth necklace. He made his first appearance in Diddy Kong Racing back in the day. For those who've watched my theory video on Banjo's backpack, you already know what type of bear I think Banjo is. But for those who don't, it basically comes down to 3 potential candidates: a brown bear, a honey bear, or a Malaysian sun bear. And I believe he's a European brown bear. Go watch that video if you want to understand more about him. I also am a firm believer that Banjo is actually a brothers bear originally from the Northern Hemisphere and flew on over to the Isle of Hags after the events of Diddy Kong Racing. He isn't the only bear in the game, as we have a few more, but bears aren't super plentiful in this land. The second most prominent bear in the story, as she's the reason we have to venture out into Grunty's lair. Tootie has a unique trait among the bears. Wearing clothes is something all the bears do, but one thing that's completely specific to her is her blonde hair. All the other bears have maybe a little hair sticking up on top of their head if they aren't wearing a hat, but it's exactly the same color as their fur, including Banjo. Tootie's hair is completely different. I actually want to provide a little random theory here. I promise right now we'll get into every species in the DK games at some point, but for now I want to briefly highlight Tiny, Dixie, and Candy Kong. All of them have the same blonde hair Tootie does, with a bit of variation, but blonde ponytails are a thing. And it seems, based on all the other Kongs, it's unique to them. Tootie would also have to come from the brothers bears in the Northern Hemisphere, so it's totally logical that she would be friends with all of them. I think since Tiny's said to idolize Candy and wants to be a model, maybe they mimicked her by growing out and dyeing their hair, and they did it all together. Or perhaps it's a wig? Kazooie's a breagle. This is a made-up species of bird combining elements from a few different types of birds, but it's primarily based on a bird species known as the Hoatzin. This is a tropical bird from South America, and fun fact, the chicks have wing claws to help them climb, and as an adult they lose these. Kazooie's design is very bright and vibrant in contrast with Banjo's brown fur. The red and yellow really stand out. She has fierce claws on her feet that she really only ever uses for traction. But a cool detail that isn't super noticeable on the original games is her yellow beak is actually tipped with orange. As she uses her beak all the time, I think this is just showing it's a bit hardened from the use. It's strengthened and conditioned to destroy even stone. The Breagle species inhabits a beach on the Isle of Hags called Breagle Beach, as seen in Grunty's Revenge in the past, and they have clearly been on this island for a long time as they have ancient structures with Breagle imagery, so this confirms Kazooie is a native to the isle. Bottles is a mole. He has a family of moles we see more of in later games, but yep, he's a mole. He's got giant glasses and is often referred to as Goggle Boy by Kazooie. Moles in real life have very poor eyesight, so this is in line with that, as he's digging underground constantly. The only question is, how does he know all these combat moves, especially for a completely different kind of animal? In Banjo's house, we can actually see his pet goldfish, Royston, just chilling. And he's not the only fish, as there are a few swimming in Spiral Mountain. And outside, in Spiral Mountain, we see several species of sentient vegetables. Topper the carrot, Ball the onion, and Collywobble the cauliflower. All of these are meant to be easy to beat enemies as you're learning your attacks, and the only non-veggie training enemy is Quarry, who is a boulder. Now if you thought these were the only species in Spiral Mountain, you could be forgiven, but everything is sentient and a species in this game. I intend for this video to be pretty thorough, so any interaction and chat from a sentient creature, even if they're not shown to be sentient in-game aside from dialogue, will still count. So this is where you'd first acquire an empty honeycomb piece. It explains what they are and what they do, as virtually every item does. I'll mark the empty and normal honeycomb variety as the same species. One is just full and the other is empty. One expands your health after collecting enough while the other fills it so you can take more hits. Spiral Mountain is also the first time you encounter the extra life, which is a trophy in the shape of Banjo, and guess what? It talks to you. So another species to add to the list. And that's all the species in Spiral Mountain in Banjo Kazooie. We'll save Grunty's Lair for the end, as it's more of a conglomeration of all species we see in each level, but I will say this is the first time we encounter the Jiggies, our main collectible, which of course are also sentient. But let's move on over to Mumbo's Mountain. The Grublins come in a few variations, the purple ones that live on Mumbo's Mountain, the seaman ones in Rusty Bucket, and the hood ones in Click Clock Wood. Interesting enough, in early development of Banjo, the Grublins had a skull mask like Mumbo, and their bodies were solid blue. If we look at later Grublin types, the hood type does have similar looking skin to Mumbo, while the ones on the mountain have some feathers sticking out of their head like Mumbo. In addition to all this, the manual states that Grunty has cursed Mumbo's face into a mask of horror, so the skull face isn't his natural face, but he's cursed to look like this. And for all of that evidence, I'm adding Mumbo to the Grublins. Jinjos are their own species who populate the land and appear to be very advanced technologically if you look deep enough. The Jinjonator is not a proper Jinjo, but is actually a robot created by ancient Jinjos and stored in Grunty's Lair before it was Grunty's Lair, as it was originally owned by the Jinjos. But machines can have a sort of living quality in this game, so I'm going to count him as a separate species in my book. The Jinjos also have many different color variations, but they are all one species. Another sentient collectible are notes. These power the magical doors. There are 100 in each level. The Mumbo tokens are used to enable Mumbo's magical abilities, silver and shiny skulls. Sentient, of course. Here on the mountain we can see a big blue bull called Big Butt. One of the few truly invincible enemies in Banjo Kazooie. He can't be defeated. You can stun him and knock him out, but he always gets back up. In the intro, there's a smaller variant of the same species. And right next to him is a beehive. These store honeycombs for health, and we can smash them open, which seems disturbing if you actually think about it. These are indeed living creatures, and surrounding them are bees. Moving forward, we actually have some species of ape on the island. Clearly, Conga and Chimpy are meant to be a reference to Donkey and Diddy, even sharing the same voice lines. Most likely, these two were made into original characters, so the Banjo Kazooie team didn't have to deal with any more license issues or complexities. There is a line where Bottles is referred to by Kazooie as Barrel Boy, and it's believed that the portrait challenge where this dialogue takes place may have originally been a DK picture. Since the picture is changed, but the line wasn't removed, it does seem likely that this is the case. Conga and Chimpy both could very well be lost family members of the Kongs. I mean, hey, if Banjo came from the Northern Hemisphere, what's to say they didn't? So I'm gonna label them as Kongs, as this is the name of the species, not a family name like a lot of people assume. Also, the oranges Conga throws talk. Which is really disturbing considering how many got smushed on the ground, and we take one to Chimpy to eat. A few more species that are first found in this level are eggs. They're used to fire out of Kazooie at enemies and things. The ticker termites, these live on the mound at the top of the level, and we can actually transform into one. They refer to the mound as Ticker's Tower. There is one more final species in this level, and that is Juju, a totem tower that wants to be fed eggs. Unsure if the whole thing makes up Juju as pieces, or if these individually are Juju. It's really hard to tell. But that's every species from Mumbo's Mountain. Why don't we take a quick trip to the beach? Treasure Trove Cove. Let's start with the basics here. Red feathers. These give Kazooie the ability to fly. Evidently her own feathers aren't enough. Some of the only other gold treasure in the game besides Jiggy's is Blubber's treasure. Shiny gold. What more could a pirate hippo want? Well, maybe a jet ski. And why don't we mention Captain Blubber himself? He's a hippo who will become the king of the pirates, though he is a bit too emotional, if you ask me. This beach is loaded with a species of crab called snippets, including the special color variant that is slightly stronger in the sandcastle, and also a species of clam called Yum Yums. Silly names. There's also a giant crab named Nipper. Don't get too close to him, but his shell is really nice on the inside. He's technically a hermit crab versus the snippets that are just normal crabs. There are actually two species of sentient treasure chests here. The most common one is Lockup, which have eyes and open up to reveal their teeth. And then there's a smaller variant called Little Lockup. Noticeably without eyes, but it moves around unlike the others that are stationary. Some more interesting species, in my opinion, are Shrapnel, who are explosive water mines. And of course, everyone's favorite, Snacker the Shark, who prowls around in the water looking for a quick bite. And rounding out the species list for Treasure Trove Cove is Leaky, a sentient broken pail. And that's everything on the beach. Now why don't we move into Clanker's Cavern? We see a few familiar species living in this environment, but we still get an introduction to a few more. Right off the bat, we see a species that hides in holes along the wall. These are called grill chompas. They are green lizard-like creatures that I can tell you are larger than you think. We also see the introduction to gold feathers in Clanker's Cavern, which power the Wonder Wing ability. Moving forward, the next big one is Clanker himself. He honestly appears to be some sort of biological machine, as he's alive but also made of metal and bolted together. I guess I'd probably call him a mechanical whale or something. He's unique among all the species in the game. If we travel down below Clanker, we can actually see Gloop the fish, who seems to love making bubbles. We also have a mutant variety of snippets that glow green and have one giant eyeball. They are also a bit more resilient than your typical snippet. And finally, the last species here are Whiplash. These are tentacle-like creatures basically exclusive to Clanker. That completes all the new species in Clanker's Cavern. Now let's head on over to Bubblegloop Swamp. This is an interesting level, as I believe we get our first taste of rare crossover between games with different species, starting with the piranha. They look exactly like the bite sizes from Donkey Kong Country. We'll have another crossover character in just a minute. But first, we get a few different types of frogs called flibbits, their color really being the only difference. And let me also point out the intro frog. Croctus are golden crocodiles hungry for eggs, and actually not the only crocodiles we see here, though they are the only golden statue-like ones. Not only do we transform into a crocodile, but we have Mr. Vile, a red croc, and he stays inside the head of a giant crocodile. Buzz bombs are dragonfly-like creatures who chase after you, as seen in the intro of the game. And now for that other rare crossover. Originally a fellow racer in Diddy Kong Racing, it does appear that Tip Top calls his home in the Isle o' Hags. We learn a bit more in Tooie, but for now, we learn that Tip Top is actually conducting a choir and performs in Bubblegloop Swamp. They seem to have their school inside of Tank Top, a giant turtle who just sits in the swamp. Funny enough, Tank Top might just be stuck in the swamp since he's a sea turtle. Based on his feet and how he complains about his feet being numb and cold, he's used to a warmer environment. He's a separate species, so let's say common turtle and sea turtle between the two of them. And then last but not least, we have the wading boots. Yep, they talk to us. These boots aren't just made for walking. They're alive. Next is Freezeezy Peak. What sort of species live in this winter wonderland? I feel like we should start with the obvious. We have more bears, which include Boggy, who's a big white polar bear with a large scarf, and a family. Mrs. Boggy we don't officially see until Tooie, but we do see Boggy's children, Groggy, Soggy, and Moggy. These are a different type of bear to Banjo and Tootie, so I separate the species, though I also believe these originated from the brothers bears. We have quite a few other strange species in this level: a scenting pile of snow and ice, wearing a hat, Sir Slush, the Twinklies, sentient colored lights that hop onward to spread their holiday joy, but they have to be wary of the twinkly munchers who appear out of cracks in their pathway. Wazza is a large walrus, which we can befriend if we transform into a walrus as well. And just around the corner we have Chinkers, which are sentient ice cubes. But that's not all, we also have sentient Christmas presents. Alright, now that's all of them in this world. Let's move into a totally different environment with Gobi's Valley. The desert environment brings some more unique species to the table. Let's hit the head honcho himself, Gobi, who's a camel. For reasons unknown, he's locked up. Other sort of main NPCs in this world consist of the ancient ones that rise out of the ground, and there are a few that come out of walls that want to eat eggs. These are a species of Sphinx, along with the larger Jinxie. Trunker is likely the first encounter in the world, and he's super thirsty in his little oasis. Then, we also have Histup, who sits in a little basket and is a snake. Toots, whose species really doesn't have a name. I feel like this is an opportunity for me to name it, so I'm gonna call it a Snoot, because it has a long snoot, and it's similar to its name. So, there you go, Internet. This species is now called a Snoot. We also have our first encounter with a human in Ruby, a snake charmer. As far as enemies go, we have Scabby, who's a scarab beetle. And this is the beginning of some supernatural enemies like the Mum-Mums, which include King Sandybutt. It's unknown what enemy these could be mummified versions of, maybe Grublins. And with those supernatural enemies, we have Grabba the Hand, who won't be our last case of giant supernatural hand, and Slappas, who are even more aggressive. This level also introduced sentient cacti and the turbo trainers gearing for some high speed action. But that's it for Gobi's Valley. Now let's press on to more supernatural goodness in Mad Monster Mansion. We will check out Grunty's lair toward the end, but it's worth mentioning that the Ripper species of sentient gravestones first appear just outside the mansion. But they're here too. They wait and hide until something living gets close. Hanging around the mansion, you can find some nibblies, which are a species of bat. We also have the whipcracks, which are a separate species from the whiplash and clankers. These are more wood-like. The limbo are skeleton-type enemies similar to mum-mums in behavior, and they can't truly be defeated. Teehees appear to be ghostified grublins, and if that's the case, Napper could be a mutated version, also ghostified, to explain his size. Around the church, there are sentient flower pots, and often in pictures throughout this level we encounter portrait champas, which are probably skeletonified versions of grill champas. Tumbler is inside of the shack, and we ride on top of him to solve a little puzzle. He appears to be an upside-down glass cup, and inside the church we have Moat's Hand, the giant ghost hand musical genius. Could be the same species as Grabba. And then capping out the most important of all is Logo, Grunty's toilet. The poor thing has to be alive. The things he's seen, I can't imagine. Well, that takes care of Mad Monster Mansion, which leads us right into Rusty Bucket Bay. Let's start with the outside of the ship. We meet Snorkel, who's a species of dolphin that is trapped under the anchor and we have to rescue him. There are lots of storage bins and things outside in this area, but they're mostly filled with familiar species like the grill champas. But on the top of the ship, we encounter grimlets, aiming to fake us out into going down the chute, but they suddenly attack with viper-looking fangs. We can also see flotsam, which are sentient life preservers and filled with air. Other than these, we see the unique sailor variant of the grublins and boomboxes, which are sentient TNT crates led by a big boss. On the surface, that's about it, but there is one more species referenced here I can't ignore. We see a picture of Barry on the Rusty Bucket, confirming more crossover between games and implying most likely Conker was in this boat. If you play the Xbox version of the game, the portrait is actually replaced straight up with an image of Conker. But squirrels, that's the species, squirrels. And that rounds it out. Now, onto our final proper level, Click Clock Wood. This is the culmination of the game's levels, so we see a lot of familiar species, but we also get a few unique ones, like one of the few other birds, Irie, who's an eagle. We actually raise Irie from an egg over the seasons in Click Clock Wood. The interesting thing about Irie is we only ever see the egg and hatch it ourselves, but this does mean the egg was laid by another eagle. Could Gruntilda have been eliminating birds in an attempt to thwart the one bird she has an issue with? Maybe she's got that bird blindness I've been hearing about. And raising this bird requires caterpillars, another species that Irie eats. We can see the hood variant of the grublin species looking like Robin Hood, and one of my least favorite enemy types, the snare bear, which are like Venus flytraps. Naughty is a beaver, straight from DK Isle. He's a common enemy type in that game. This also supports more crossover between the game islands. If you've ever seen my Mapping the Rare Universe, it's 100% worth a watch. Along the walls we have the big cluckers, which are very similar to the grill champas, but these are in fact birds. And then we have the only actual squirrels in the game, Nabnut, who's the most prominent, with him having a home in Click Clock Wood, and then in later seasons he can be found sharing a bed with a pink squirrel named Mrs. Nabnut. Apparently the only character not shown in the character parade. That's kind of interesting. Also, sentient acorns. The final species in this area really are the Zubbas, which are a species of yellow hornets who protect Jiggies for Gruntilda. That's the total of species in Click Clock Wood. Now let's tackle the Lair and see what we missed along the way. Why don't we start by talking about humans for a second? They exist in this everything is anthropomorphic world. We mentioned Ruby, but Gruntilda Winky Bunyan is the main antagonist, and although green, it does seem like she's human. She also has 3 sisters, but in this first game she only has 1, and they're both green. So green is their natural skin color. It may be that humans who use magic as they do causes their skin to change to green. Like how in the cauldrons it's all green, maybe it dyes their skin. We do have other humans who aren't green, and using magic is really the only distinction between them. And we do see mutant creatures who turn green. Maybe it's pollution? I don't know, but I'm gonna go with magic for now. We have bikini girls at the end of the game serving drinks to our heroes, and these human characters have a normal pigmentation on their skin. No green to be found. Our next species, though, similar to grublins, is its own separate thing, the gruntlings. These are a slightly tougher species. Physically, they are larger and stronger. We see them as hooded, cloaked figures in a few colors throughout Gruntilda's lair, but the big one we all know would be Klungo, Grunty's faithful assistant. There's speculation he could be a species from Tui, but I believe he favors the gruntlings quite a bit. And him being the only green one, but very close to Grunty, he's also shown to be utilizing magic and ingesting potions in later games, so the green skin for magic users theory still holds up. I believe he's a gruntling. Dingpot is Grunty's main cauldron, but there is a species of cauldron throughout the lair. They offer quick shortcuts between each other. Another large biting fish can be found in the lair in some dirty water. Chump is a large orange fish. He must be territorial because there's only ever one around at a time. The final few species here in the lair consist of Grunty's broomstick, who flies her around faithfully, and the prizes at the end of Furnace Fun, which seem to be alive. And of course we can't forget Grunty's sentient spellbook, who offers us magic cheat codes, Cheeto. What a legend. Well, that's every species in Banjo Kazooie listed out. Every level offers unique enemies, and even if a type was reused, often they're altered in appearance to fit into the world. Oh, but wait, there is something I missed. The transformations. They are in fact a living species as well, and although most transformations are a familiar species we know in the world already, like a bee, a crocodile, a walrus, a termite, there is one that's unique. And that's the pumpkin transformation, giving us another unique species. And now that is the entirety and every species and character of the world of Banjo Kazooie, totaling up to 101 unique species. This is taking into account and merging a few different species I mentioned twice, as they appear in different worlds, or their appearance is different, like humans, squirrels, and gremlins, into one category. What's your favorite species in the game? Let me know in the comments below. But before I go, I've proudly partnered with Figgies on my channel. Go check them out and find your favorite species. Banjo, Clanker. Go check them out, the link in the description below, and use code JiggyFiggy at checkout for a discount. Well, that's all I have for you. Please be sure to drop a like on this video to help spread my content, and subscribe so you don't miss a future upload. Until next time, have a good one.